Jeez, Euphoric Brothers, it's been more than 2 whole months since the release of Banban 4, and still no word on when 5 or 6 are coming out? What do you guys expect me to do in that time? There's only so many times I could put the FNAF 1 trailer in a video while saying the words mascot horror. There's gotta be something that I can do to hold me over until that. Okay, never mind. FNAF fan games are something that have not just been a staple in the mascot horror community, but the broader indie horror community as a whole for years now. But despite the popularity of every other mascot horror game that came after it, the fan game scenes for all of those games are nowhere near as prevalent, if existent at all. You'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of good Bendy or Poppy Playtime fan games, or at least ones that would rival the sheer abundance of FNAF fan games. But that doesn't mean these projects don't entirely exist, and of course, we obviously always have exceptions. Banban is honestly a really peculiar case here because it had something going for it that a lot of other games don't have, and that's content farms.
Don't you know? I'm Huggy Wuggy!
Now, that isn't inherently true. Every mascot horror game that's popular has a little bit of that content farm tinge to it. But with how easy it is to replicate the Banban style in gameplay, we have seen a huge surge of fake chapter gameplay videos plastered up with Unreal Engine 5 for millions of misguided children to watch, sincerely believing that Coach Pickles is going to show up in Garten of Banban 7. Though a very interesting thing about a lot of these content farms is that you can actually tell that some of them are genuine gameplay done in private applications that will probably never get leaked. In a way, you can consider these fan games in their own right. Are they actually functional or work as genuine playable experiences? Probably not. And that's probably why they'll never be released. But it is so weird knowing that these games exist and probably are playable, but will never be able to be publicly experienced. But that doesn't mean we don't have alternatives. Banban fan games aren't the most common thing to stumble across, but there are certainly a handful of ones to play, with a pretty interesting amount of variety too. We have completely original games, short boss fight arenas that replicate key moments in content farm videos, and even a full remake of Banban from the ground up that I've honestly neglected talking about for way too long. I'm going in asking one simple question: do any of these games do a better job at doing Banban than Banban? No, honestly not really, but I assume I actually have to give a reason as to why. I think a good place to start are these boss fight recreation games, since there's 2 that we can play and we can go from there. It's honestly really amusing to see these 2 be the only content farm recreation games on this list, judging how Buggy Huggy is one of the only creators in this field to have all of their videos very clearly be animations and not actually gameplay driven. Before we get right into them, I think I should actually give an explanation as to who these 2 characters are, since if you're not familiar with Banban content farm stuff, all the words I said up until this point probably sounded absolutely incomprehensible. As a way to get more engagement and interest in fake chapter videos, it's not uncommon to see the introduction of a bunch of things that aren't in the actual Garten of Banban games. This can be obvious stuff like being a new chapter or a new map, but also stuff like different drone remotes and most notoriously new characters. I don't know who comes up with a lot of these guys, but some of these stupid characters get so big to the point where you could find hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of bootleg plush listings of characters that don't actually even exist. It's so strange. Like, imagine if back when the Sparky the Dog FNAF hoax was going around, we had bootleg plushies made within the first month of that image existing. Oh, wait, I don't think that's the best comparison. Another really funny thing about a lot of these content farm characters too is the origins for them come from the weirdest sources. Like Coach Pickles, for example, who is undoubtedly the most popular out of these content farm characters, is just a traced over version of art from Monsters University. And it doesn't end there. Chef Pigster, who is the star of this fan game I've been neglecting to play this whole time to have a tangent about this, is traced over from fucking Leonard from the Angry Birds movie. Anyways, now that you've got a rundown on what these characters are, let's get into the actual game they were put in. This game is based on the Buggy Huggy content farm video graciously named Garten of Banban 3 Chef Pigster's Secret Room, a video where it starts with you being chased by a giant Captain Fiddles before falling into the void while we meet Chef Pigster. If I had to give this game anything, it's that it does a good job at replicating the entire map in the video to make it playable, but judging that since it's been Banban, it may not be the hardest thing to replicate. But unfortunately, my compliments gotta end there because holy shit, this is so hard to control. The game has the same problem I said Slaughter Me Street 2 had in the last video, where the Unity engine, for some reason, has a lot of amateur games that have very terrible movement. Our goal in this game is about the exact same as the original video. We meet Chef Pixter, who looks absolutely terrifying in this lighting, pick up a bunch of plates in his room, which makes him freak out and run directly into another room, completely neglecting anything that may be blocking him, and then the actual boss fight of the game begins. Just like in the video, we have to control 2 drones at the same time to stop Chef Pixter from eating more, because if he does, he gets extremely big and clips through everything to get you. And you're likely gonna experience this a lot, because if you think the drones in regular Banban are bad, you have seen nothing yet. These are possibly some of the most finicky drone controls you could ever program. Half the time, they don't even go where they're supposed to and just dive bomb out of sight. It took me over 10 tries and several attempts of trial and error to just figure out how to get the 2 drones to hit the button. But eventually, we get to the end, and dear God, it's dreadful. For some reason, the dev thought it would be a good idea to crank the audio up here to ear-bleeding levels, and it drowns out literally anything else around it. I'm gonna give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about, but keep in mind I did balance it out to be not nearly as loud for your own sake, but you'll get what I'm saying. Imagine this shit is eardrum bursting. Chef Pixter.
Bro! Please, put him out of his misery. Ah!
After Chef Pixter gets his misery put out of him by Singer Flynn, we can turn around to go into a room that's labeled with Stinky Joel, which is another Banban fan character. I swear this rabbit hole goes so much deeper than you can imagine, and if you're not in the loop, just look at this fucking mural. It tells you everything you need to know. But that wraps up playable Chef Pixter boss fight. I stand by my belief that turning some of these content farm videos into actual playable games is a pretty cool idea in theory, especially since all the groundwork for it is already laid out. But in practice, it might not be the best idea. These videos are clearly made with the intention of being watched in the very specific presentation they are given in, so trying to replicate that in a way that's actually fun to play may be a bit of a difficult task. But it's a task that this developer would attempt to replicate one more time. And is this attempt better than the first? No, not really. So I think this one may have come earlier than the Chef Pixter one, which would make sense because it lacks details that were added in that game like a view bob or jumping. This time, we're up against Hunter Tim, who is a blind enemy we have to avoid and look through several lockers in hopes of finding a purple keycard that we need to get out of here. Just like the previous game, this is also based on a video by Buggy Huggy. I honestly don't know why this was the one that got a playable recreation of it and not something like Coach Pickles, since this character isn't nearly as popular, but I guess it still has a pretty memorable set piece from that series. Once we're done going through several lockers while trying to avoid Hunter Tim, we stumble across the keycard that we can use to get out of this locker labyrinth. When we do, we are met with another extremely loud scream that drowns out literally everything else that may be running. I'm not gonna bother playing it this time around since I believe you probably get the point. But to put into retrospect how loud this was, I had to manually turn down the application to a 6, and even still, it was very clearly audible. And you best hope that you don't fail in the chase scene that comes from this either, because your respawn point is at the exact start of this cutscene. So you're gonna have to listen to it over and over again if you don't know what you're doing. We now have a giant Hunter Tim chasing us, forcing us to go into these side doors to avoid being caught by him. Eventually getting to the end of the hallway, we hit a button with our drone and give these bastards a taste of their own medicine. Walking out, we head to the Coach Pickles room and the game ends. As stated previously, introducing these characters into an actual playable environment is pretty cool, especially since these animations just serve the gaslight impressionable kids mostly, but in execution are definitely not that great. There's a myriad of reasons why these fake videos are videos and not just simply fan games. Not only because making them videos is far more profitable, but once again, also just because these would just not work well in an actual playable environment. At at least if these games are anything to go off of. But something did spawn in the wake of these fake chapter gameplay videos that I was partially involved with. Back in July, my buddy Aya and I made a video going over a lot of these content farm channels. I was in that video to briefly discuss the channel sale playtime, but that's not what I want to focus on right now. At the end of the video, Aya would design his own fake Banban OC, and it would take off way further than I believe anyone expected. But although we can talk about his inclusion in different animations or bootleg plushies made of the character, it goes deeper than that. You could even say it goes to Handy Dan's lair. Haha, you see what I did?
Call me Handy Dan, the key to Garten secret door.
This game is pretty interesting to me because it's actually not this developer's first plunge into making Banban fan content. The first game they made was Jumbo's Kitchen, which funnily enough is another Chef Pigster game. Although this one doesn't feature Chef Pigster and instead features Jumbo Josh and a British Captain Fiddles.
Chef Pigster.
I'd played this game for myself, but unfortunately it seems to have been taken down. Which is really unfortunate in my opinion, because this is by far the most visually accurate game to the Banban style on this list so far. But honestly, that might just be because it's most likely made in Unreal 5 and not really for any other reason. Since I couldn't play the game myself, I watched Fusion Z Gamer play it instead.
Oh my gosh, dude, I thought that guy it was cheeked up. This guy's got a dumpy on him. Holy moly.
Honestly, we're not missing out on much. Despite this game looking better than the first Chef Pigster game we played, the actual objective here is practically the same as the first, just with less content. We need to pick up cups and plates to throw away while avoiding Jumbo Josh. The pathfinding this enemy has is very funny because it seems to just chase you and then stop without any given notice. Doing our task, we escape into the room where the boss fight would happen, but then we just get jump scared by Chef Pigster and then the game ends. What were we talking about again? Oh, right, Handy Dan. As mentioned earlier, this was made by the same developer as Jumbo's Kitchen. TMP Games is a face you're going to be seeing a little bit because they've made some of the most Banban fan content on this list. I honestly find it really funny that I'm covering this game since Aya has not really acknowledged Handy Dan since that video. I don't know, man. Maybe I should get him to play it. Getting to Handy Dan's lair, the progression is about what you'd expect out of any sort of Banban media at this point. You pick up some key cards to get through some doors, you see some silly mural art, but right before you are even ready, you see him. Our goal once we get in here is to pick up 15 sticks. Jesus Christ, Handy Dan, you are far from handy. Also, I don't know what's up with this developer's AI programming, but they are very consistent with making some of the most bizarre pathfinding I have ever seen in my life. Because Handy Dan functions the exact same way Jumbo Josh did in the last game. Something else I really like about the sticks that you pick up in this game is that since there are so many, you just kind of end up throwing a bunch of sticks on the floor at one point. Once you pick up enough sticks, a hammer spawns that you can use to break down these boards to finally leave Handy Dan's lair. Getting out, you are reunited with your drone, which has been absent throughout all of this, and then... Yeah, the game just closes itself after this happens. Alright, moving on. This developer has many other vaguely themed Banban games in their discography too, but there's really only one more that I want to spotlight here before moving on. This game is called Happy Land, and it looks to be the most polished out of all the three we'll be checking out from these guys. When it comes to replicating the Banban style, they do it pretty well once again, while also still making the game have somewhat of a visual identity of its own. I don't know, for a fan game it serves its purpose well enough in the visual department, but in all fairness, every mascot horror game just kind of looks like this now, so it's not really much to write home about. The progression is also pretty bare bones and repetitive as well, really only amounting to finding keycards to unlock a door and then finding another keycard in that room to unlock another door, so on and so forth. Though, while we do this, we see some mural art for characters named Lonky, Pinky, and the Naughty Blues. Look, if I had to give them anything, at least they added an adjective before the color. They only have any sort of role in this room and here, where once again, they have seemingly random AI, and you need to avoid them while parkouring to the other side of the room. It took me a few tries because one thing that definitely carries over from base Banban to here is the really shoddy movement, so you're likely gonna miss time jumps a lot when attempting this course. Beating the obstacle course, you are given a gun as a reward. And since this game is super short, you very obviously don't do much with it. The most it's used is for shooting these little targets in this room to unlock the final door of this game. It's honestly really funny how little you get to use the gun, given the fact the developer took time to program in ADS, and it has a completely different bullet spread and accuracy from hip firing. You know, at least the gun in here is better than the gun in Showdown Bandit. Regardless, you get locked into a cutscene where you need to stare down this hallway, and after a while, this big red guy bolts in and kills you immediately, and honestly, it kinda got me. The game ends after this, and there's not really much else to say. There's some lore notes around, but I'm sorry, I'm not reading all that. Overall, the best way I could describe this is inoffensive. There isn't anything outwardly horrible in this game, but there also isn't anything all that special, and it's pretty on par with its source material and its content. It's honestly what I can say to describe most of these projects I played or witnessed from this developer, but for fan games of a series most people regard as the worst in its medium, I think it's still a lot better than what most people may be expecting. Man, I need to take a break from all this Banban nonsense. I need to play something else to palate cleanse from all this. So what the fuck? It wouldn't be a mascot horror fan games video without the obligatory FNAF themed game. I'm telling you right now, for every popular mascot horror game that's on the market, there's probably a FNAF inspired fan game tied to it, and Banban is certainly no exception. I kinda just threw this in here to acknowledge that, because this game is very nothing. You're stationed at the receptionist desk at the entrance of Banban's kindergarten, and you gotta watch out for Opila Bird while winding up Jumbo Josh. You're also given what is possibly the least comprehensible night phone call known to man.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi there, and welcome to your new summer job at Banban's kindergarten.
Throughout the night, Opila will slowly come closer to your office and eventually make her way into your room, and I don't know how you defend yourself from her. You're given a Banban mask, and I guess it's meant to protect you, but it doesn't make her go away. I just kept it on for the rest of the night when she showed up, and I only took it down to quickly wind up Jumbo Josh. After the longest 8 minutes of your life, the game finally ends. Yeah, there was only one night. All of these Banban fan games so far have had a pattern of being pretty underwhelming, and like, yeah, I get it, we've seen the source material. Though regardless, most of these games can be summarized into 1 or 2 paragraphs with not much else to discuss after. Despite this, there is still one Banban fan game I've yet to talk about, or really acknowledge in any meaningful way in the past. And with it being a full remake of the first chapter of Banban, I think I might have saved the best for last in this case. Garten of Banban Reincarnated, or just Reincarnated, is something I have neglected to talk about for a really long time. Mainly because everything that could have been said about it practically has been already. Someone with no dev experience made a game better than the original in under a week. But is that all necessarily true? Yes and no. With this being a project made in such a short notice, I do have to give credit where credit is due and say that aesthetically at least, yes, this game blows the original Banban way out of the water. But gameplay-wise, it doesn't really innovate much on Banban's actual gameplay. And honestly, I don't really think that was ever the intention. One of the first things you'll notice right away in this version of the game is the drone is completely gone. And for what it's worth, its presence was certainly not a necessity. I get that it was mainly removed due to time constraints, but it is so underutilized in every Banban game that its absence isn't really felt that hard. Minus that, the progression is about 1-to-1, at least for the first half. You know, finding the key card to enter into the playground room and finding all of Appeal Bird's eggs. But just because you don't have the drone doesn't mean you're going in empty-handed. You're given a flashlight instead, which is appropriate judging as these environments here are a lot darker than the ones in the original Banban. The inclusion of a flashlight does make sense here and works well for this version of this environment. And it also made for some really cool shots as well. Opila peering through the window at the end of the hallway is done so much better with this added atmosphere and redone character design. That's also probably the most noticeable thing about this remake too. The character redesigns present in this version of the game are a huge improvement to the original, giving all of the characters professions decisions relatively related to the small characterization present in the original games, such as making Opila Bird a children's caretaker type and Jumbo Josh a cafeteria chef. The egg hunt is also done a little differently this time around too. At one point, you gotta go through these tunnels to retrieve the last of the eggs, and at some points in here, you can see Opila ominously staring at you from the darkness. Once all the eggs are collected, instead of getting the hammer to get into the ball pit, we're instead given a screwdriver to go into a vent, which at one point you fall through. Now you gotta do a Roblox obby. It's really funny seeing this environment here since it looks a lot like the end of Banban 2. Making your way further into the vent duct, you walk out and are finally met with the face of Opila Bird. Although this setup is pretty basic, it's honestly really effective at what it's trying to achieve. We are in this tight, claustrophobic maze in which we need to narrowly escape Opila in, all while intense chase music plays. For this, the end feels 100 times more climactic, even if still very amateur, ending with us falling deep into Jumbo Josh's lair, ending off the chapter. Reincarnated does a pretty good job at giving us a glimpse at a more aesthetically pleasing Banban, but still doesn't really have anything else to offer when it comes to actually being a fun and engaging game, which I don't see as a fault to Unique Geese. It was bound to this fate for being as faithful of a recreation as it is, and I honestly think it might be a little commendable for that reason. It really makes me wish for more projects like this in the future. This little taste of a better Banban honestly gives me a feeling of excitement and intrigue that's more than just for laughs and ironic amusement. Unfortunately, there won't be any more things like this from Unique Geese, since the Euphoric brothers don't really like remakes of their game, like, at all. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it is certainly interesting to look at what we could have potentially had here if the Euphoric brothers took more time between chapter releases, as well as maybe outsource some of the assets to different artists or modelers. In conclusion, Banban Fangames are not very good, but honestly, the lack of quality certainly comes down a lot from the lack of quality of the source material, with some of these games attempting to be one-to-one creations of set experiences, or just what is likely some kid's first coding project. I feel that these are all what Banban Fangames ever had to be, and I can't lie when I say a lot of them at least got a few good laughs out of me, which I think is all they ever needed to do. Anyways, I'm gonna go stop by Jumbo's Kitchen. One like equals one prayer for Chef Pigster to get free from Stinger Flynn. I've been Dags, and until next time, see ya.